there was so much excitement with the rise of Bernie Sanders and his candidacy brought together all these factions of the left that are usually pretty opposed to each other and fighting with each other. But of course, there was no way that the very right-wing American establishment was going to let even this kind of middle sort of center-left figure like Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders isn't really a leftist. I mean, he's kind of like the social democrat of the sort of European style that you're talking about, maybe a little bit more left than that. But he certainly isn't some like raging socialist or anti-imperialist. But, in the American context, he's quite left. And his candidacy did bring together these different factions that I'm talking about, but no one was going to let him ascend to the White House. And after he failed in 2016, failed again in 2020, all of these different factions of the left and these different progressives who supported him, I think, were kind of lost. And then in many ways began to turn on each other. So that's been a problem. But also something else happened. And that's that, starting in, I think, 2016 and then after with the rise of Trump, you did have this attempt by the far right to co-opt disgruntled Bernie Sanders supporters. Steve Bannon even said that this was a goal of his and of his movement. And since then, we've seen a lot of attempts to do just that, particularly with like messaging that states that you'll hear things like, oh, there's no left and right. There's just like ruling elites and the rest of us. And the left and the right have to unite, right? Like those distinctions don't matter anymore. It's the sort of thing I think that we see from self-proclaimed Christian nationalist Marjorie Taylor Greene. She calls herself that, by the way, a Christian nationalist. But she'll try to like appeal to the left by tweeting about Julian Assange. Recently her whole defund the FBI thing that she seems to have very quickly abandoned. Anyways, the reason I raise that is because I think that you're probably the perfect person to address this. What does it mean for those who are maybe confused, especially for younger people who are watching this happen? And maybe they do think that it is true. Marjorie Taylor Greene is talking about Julian Assange and like AOC isn't, right? People do see that and they say that. So Brian, I know this is hard to answer in, a short amount of time, but what does it mean to be a leftist? And how should the left engage with the right, if at all? Is there ever an appropriate time to make alliances with the right, even if the right is being opportunistic? And how can the left prevent being co-opted by those with a nasty agenda? People like Steve Bannon, people like Peter Thiel, who is this billionaire who is willing to throw money at anything if it means co-opting, again, that sort of disgruntled Bernie Sanders supporter.
Well, we should never forget that the Nazis called themselves the National Socialist Party, right? Because that was precisely the effort by the right to conquer sections of the progressive socialist working class and middle class and bring them into a fascist movement. And in order to do that, if you read Nazi propaganda from 1928 or 29, it's against the banks and against the capitalists and against the imperialists. And it's very, radical left sounding, but they're fascists. So we just let's remember what happened in Germany. As soon as the fascists came to power, the left went to concentration camps or was killed. Not to mention the Jews, not to mention gay people, not to mention the Roma people, not to mention the extinguishing of the unions. The right is the enemy of labor. The right is the enemy of the labor movement, of the organized labor movement. The right will never come out really, unless it's an openly racist union that is fighting like to prevent black people from, like a craft union.
Right, yeah.
But the labor
like
movement.
Police unions come to mind, yeah.
But, the right is the enemy of the left. And also, I think in the United States, because racists, white supremacists call for the freedom of Julian Assange or same with Tucker Carlson, if any of these right-wing, really super reactionary right-wing fascist or semi-fascist type people say something progressive and the left says, oh, look, they said something that we agree with, and now we're going to build a bond with them. What does it mean to build a bond with white supremacists? It means to forego the alliance between the left and Black America. And what is the dynamic force of change throughout history in the United States? It was the struggle, first and foremost, of Black America. Black America has been the trigger for all other social movements, in fact. And you can't, if you're white or not Black, talk about building Black and white unity or Black, white, Latino, Native, Asian unity against the system, and at the same time say, well, but some of our friends are really white supremacists because some of our white supremacist friends think Julian Assange should go free, or some of our white supremacist friends like Tucker Carlson, who is at war against immigrant families coming from Latin America, that he's our friend because he spoke out against this or that abusive characteristic feature of the FBI. No, if you want to make change in America, you have to realize that the struggle must have at its center the fight against racism. The fight against racism is the key element for the rest of the political class struggle in America. And all of these people who are saying, oh, we can have left-right unity, they don't give a damn about the unity between white people and Black people against a racist, white supremacist, imperialist, capitalist system, because if you did, you wouldn't choose a handful of fascists, demagogues, against an alliance with Black America. And that's the cutting edge in the United States. It's always been the fight, the struggle against racism and white supremacy is always at the very center. And the fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene or Tucker Carlson or whoever cares about this or that thing that coincides with a leftist position, we absolutely can't unite with them. I think that this is, it happened in Nazi Germany, by the way. The Nazis were, as they took power, they were able to consolidate a section of the proletariat in Germany that had been with the Communist Party.
Wow.
They did. There was a crossover. It wasn't, it was Hitler came to power, and using militarization and regimentation, they created more of a full employment economy when there had been devastating unemployment when the Communist Party got strong. So a section of the proletariat said, well, we didn't like Hitler before, but we have jobs now. What are we fighting for? What are we, as the left, what are we fighting for? The reason we have war is because of capitalism. The reason we have environmental destruction is because of capitalism. The reason a big part of the population in the world is living in absolute destitution in spite of the advanced means of production is because of capitalism. The problem here is the capitalist system. If you're a left, but all you can do is form conjunctural alliances with people who have positions that coincide with your position on this or that issue and don't have the rudder of working class unity against capitalism, then you'll end up in the right. The leftists who are coddling the right are on their way to becoming the right, or they're on their way to becoming completely irrelevant, or both. So I believe that this is a point of demarcation that we have to be very, very strong about. Temporary alliances are possible with all kinds of people, but a temporary alliance with white supremacists? No. We can never make a temporary alliance with white supremacists on any issue because the biggest problem in America is white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying that as a white person trying to build a left that forges an effective multinational unity. Without multinational unity, including with Black leadership at its very center, there won't be progressive change in America. And I would say we're in a do or die stage in American history. You look at the US is preparing for major power conflict with Russia and China. The US isn't doing a damn thing about climate change, even though the writing is on the wall. You have, automation coming in where corporate capitalists can say, oh, we're going to get rid of 50% of the workforce in the next 5 years because we're going to replace you with automated technologies. Like, these are existential, multiplying, cascading crises, all of which have their roots in capitalism. So if you want to be for this or that issue, but not be against the capitalist system and not be fighting for its only alternative, which is socialism, you're a leftist without a rudder. And yes, you can make an alliance with a right winger, but you do it by sacrificing your black brothers and sisters and comrades in the black community as a whole. And I consider that to be an unforgivable sin.